My name is Lyra Brennan. I'm the Assistant Director of the Coastal Waterbird Program, and we are a portion of the much larger program, Mass Audubon, and we work all across the coastline of Massachusetts protecting both coastal habitats and rare and threatened shorebird species. I've worked for the program cumulatively for about 4 years. I left for a couple years to go get my master's degree and came back. And right now we oversee almost 200 sites across Massachusetts, and the North Shore and areas in Newburyport, and Ipswich are really some jewels in the crown of the Coastal Waterbird Program. They're just amazingly productive sites for shorebirds, everything from least terns to piping plover to roseate terns, which is an endangered species that we saw this year, which is very exciting. We have a really large tern colony up at Newburyport Town Beach right now, which is also very exciting. I think it's 7 times larger than it was last year. We oversee 2 staff up here, and we're always just so excited to come up here because of this varied habitat across the region, this incredible salt marsh, the beautiful beaches, the array of wildlife. A lot of people from other regions, a lot of staff that we have in other regions always kind of wants to sneak up here and check out these beaches. And I think we have kind of a 3-tiered approach at Mass Audubon, and one of those is really education. So we really want people to know more about what we do and what our larger goals are. It's not just a sort of a watch this bird. It's more like, how can we make this something that everyone can be involved in? We want to teach people about our habitats, teach people about these birds. Another kind of tier of what we do is really working in science and gathering all the data we can, not just about the birds, but sand dunes and these habitats, what the water is doing, overwash, which is when nests get washed over. And then the last thing is really policy. So we take all this information and all the things we're seeing about sites and towns and species, and we're trying to build them to continue to protect these really kind of vulnerable coastal areas. As we saw this last winter, just incredible flooding, incredible storms across the coast of Massachusetts. And while our birds really love that because it gives them all sorts of new habitat and new food, it's also something that we want to make sure that these beaches and these areas are around for as long as we can possibly have them and protect them as much as we can. So this year in Newbury and Newburyport and Ipswich, really, because we think of all 3 of them as sort of this almost continuous beach coming down from Salisbury. We also monitor Salisbury, but this year we didn't really have too much going on there. But this year we really saw our least terns do very, very well. We saw, as I said, sort of a 7-fold increase in a colony that we had in Newburyport. Our piping plover, we actually had almost, I think it was, let's think about this, how many nest attempts? We had 18 nest attempts down at Sandy Point, which is really incredible. We managed to fledge about 11 chicks. And these days, what we're really aiming for is to have 1.2 plover chicks fledged per pair. That might not seem like a lot because each pair has 4 chicks. But just to keep the population sustainable, that's what a lot of organizations are saying. If we can just get 1 or 2 chicks to survive from that brood, then we'll kind of be on an upward swing. Now, since the piping plover was listed, we're looking at about a 5-fold increase in the state of Massachusetts, which is really incredible. And that's not just organizations like Mass Audubon or private organizations working. That's sort of an effort of towns, of individuals, of the state, of the federal government, really trying to recover species that use these beach habitats that people also happen to really, really love. So we did see some success in terms of piping plover. We had, I think, 5 pairs out on Newbury and Newburyport kind of collectively, and we fledged about 5 chicks, I think, from those pairs. So we're almost getting to that number. And the challenges we really see on beaches like this are sometimes the heat. If we have birds hatching really late, they get really, really hot. And if chicks can't get down to the water to feed, it can be really challenging for them to get big enough. When you're out on the beach, sometimes you might see them tiny little cotton balls running around. They're about this big when they hatch, but they're precocial, which means that they hatch and immediately they're on the go. They're responsible for feeding themselves. So they're very different than something like a robin that waits in the nest to get fed by mom and dad. Our least terns, which are more of a seabird, and the difference between a seabird and a shorebird is that terns or seabirds spend most of their time out at sea, and they really just come ashore to have their young and then fly away. Least terns don't feed themselves. They wait for their parents to come and feed them, but it doesn't mean that their chicks don't also spend some time waddling around, getting themselves into trouble. They're also very cute. That's one trend with shorebirds you'll notice. All of them are really cute when they're little. And they're also very difficult to see. So one thing we ask people when we're really hoping to get these chicks to grow and get strong enough to fly away with their families at the end of the season is really just to watch your step. In some areas where we have signage, you'll note that it'll say families ahead or young chicks ahead, birds nesting in this area, and sometimes it's just really hard to see them. So we want to make sure that people aren't stepping on them or picking them up, because they are actually wild animals, regardless of how much they look like little stuffed animals. So we have seen a lot of success in this year, and I think that's a combined effort of not just our staff, because we do have 2 staff out here working full-time, but also just people that come and are really excited about learning about these birds and that really care about these places. And we talk to people that have not only lived here their whole lives, but people that vacation here every summer, whose families, 3 generations back have always come to Plum Island and have always seen the birds, who've always spent time at Parker River. So I think that the success of these birds is really a large part about people wanting to know more about them and caring about them. And this year, having the roseates in the least tern colony down at Sandy Point was really exciting. Those are a species that we just don't see a lot of. We see a lot of them on the Outer Cape staging, which is basically a word that means a stopover on their way down to their southern winter grounds. So we don't see as many of them breeding, but when we see roseate terns kind of stopping through and nesting here, it's an indicator that we're taking really good care of this place. And I think that that's also a combined effort of the state and the federal government in places like Sandy Point and sort of Parker River. So in terms of how our greater species did across the state, I would say those trends are pretty similar. It's been a really good year for a lot of reasons. We saw a lot less flooding this year, with sea level rise and the beaches kind of getting eroded over the winter. Sometimes we see all of our nests get washed away, time after time. And these birds are such determined parents that they will keep nesting. They'll say, nope, we're gonna try one more time, we're gonna try one more time. They'll re-nest up to 4 times because they really want to have those chicks hatch and be able to rear them. So we often get scared in places like Newbury and Newburyport that the waves are gonna be really high and they're gonna take those nests away. We didn't see a lot of that. So that was something that was really magical, especially after the winter storms. In terms of what people can do to help, I think that it's a really broad spectrum of just taking care of the places that we all love and all spend time at. And that can be anything from not going inside the fencing because you might step on a nest in the sand, or you might help erode the dune. We see a lot of dunes eroding and a lot of dune reinforcement. So the more you're inside these fenced vegetated areas, the more you're kind of contributing to pulling sand down and making it a little bit harder for these areas to keep protecting the towns. And another thing is just taking care of the beach in ways that we've all been taught to, like picking up your trash when you leave. Leaving your trash can bring predators on the beach, and that's one problem we see a lot up here in Newbury and Newburyport. We see raccoons, coyote, foxes, sort of small predators come in, and they love nothing more than to sniff out where humans have been, where trash is, where food is, and they find those nests and they will eat them. And again, those parents will re-nest. They really, really want to get a successful nest out of the season, but that's another way that people can kind of steer their efforts if they're interested in helping protect their shorebirds. And another thing I would say is just to reach out, to organizations like Joppa Flats, reach out to the town. If you're excited about the wildlife that's happening all around us all the time, there's so many opportunities to volunteer, to learn more about the birds, to do teaching, and to get involved in all sorts of wildlife, sea creatures and coyote, those are a predator, but still, I think that there's so many opportunities in a place like Newburyport because of all the agencies working so hard to protect this place that we have a lot of opportunities here. And we love the idea of people kind of learning more and getting excited about it. A lot of people don't actually even know that these birds are on the beach, even though they've been here for a very long time, right before their kind of population crashed. So the more we know, the better we can kind of protect these places. One thing we do want to invite people to do is if you have feedback about either symbolic fencing that we put up to protect nests, or different things happening on your property. Maybe you see a monitor walking by on your property and you're curious or concerned about what they're doing. Please feel free to call Mass Audubon, call the Coastal Waterbird Program, or call your town, because we always want to work with landowners and with the community. Feedback is really, really welcome. It's a team effort, and we want to make sure that everyone is getting to use the beaches to do their boating, do their sunbathing, do their surfing, and I think there's room for everyone to do that on the beach. So we definitely love hearing from people, and we love being able to fill people in on what's happening at all these different places. Another thing that's sort of fun to know is where all this information goes. So what are we doing with all of this data that you're collecting all season long? And the answer is we submit that to the state so we know how the population is changing from year to year. And then we take that information and we say, okay, now we're going to change slightly how we're managing next year. We know that we're going to need more fencing here, or this year we're going to keep an eye out for those birds here, or these numbers are going down, let's figure out why. So we take a lot of data, and there's lots of different ways that we can use that to continue evolving and working to, again, better protect the birds and better kind of involve people and let us all enjoy the beach because it's really there for us to enjoy. We generally start coming out on the beach on the North Shore in April, March and April. So you'll see us out there in our Mass Audubon gear, just getting up some fencing, checking out what the beaches look like after the winter. And we invite you to come up if you ever see anyone on the beach that looks like you won't miss us. We have the binoculars, we got the hat, we got the name tag, we have our shirts, and we always want to talk about birds, always want to talk about the coastal habitats that we have. That's what we love to do. So please don't be shy if you're concerned about whether you can do something or not, or, we also know a lot about the town rules in terms of the beach and different access points, so don't be shy. We love hearing from people and we love communicating about what we do, and we hope to see you out there on the beach.